first, it's Kevin, and yet another no platforming story.
Indeed. The spectre of no platforming, as you say, has raised its ugly head again as per Oxford University, where those strident student defenders of free speech banned a speech by former Home Secretary Amber Rudd because of her connection to the Windrush scandal. I mean, to be fair, she was involved. She did resign for misleading. Yeah, I mean, not even the most fervent anti-Tory could really blame Miss Rudd for the Home Office's disgraceful failures over the treatment of long-term immigrants who were invited to the UK in its hour of need. She inherited the problem and resigned when she realised officials in her department had wrongly detained and deported people.
She had honour, is where you're going. Yes, integrity and honour.
I agree. And nevertheless, the UN Women Oxford Society voted to boycott Amber's talk on women in politics, and the now ex-MP arrived to a completely empty hall. President of the society, Felicity Graham, was forced to cancel the event at the last moment under pressure from militant students who have turned banning people with whom they disagree into a way of life. Let's talk to, I know, a fervent defender of free speech, Deputy Editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater. Excellent. Hello, Tom.
Good afternoon.
Great piece in The Spectator, if I may say so as well, Tom.
Thank you very much.
You seem to be of a similar view to myself, which is that the No Platform Brigade are starting to come across as really very nasty indeed, very much more nasty than the people they try and no platform.
Oh, completely. And it's becoming completely absurd, you know, because I'm old enough to remember when students on campus, the people they tried to shut down were kind of really kind of hard right, far right people. Yeah. You know, the old slogan was no platform for fascists. Now it seems to be no platform for middle of the road Tories as well, which is a really strange development. And I think it just goes to show, it kind of proves that point that free speech fundamentalists like myself have been making for some time, which is if you kind of allow censorship to go on, it doesn't stay put. You know, even if you say it's only acceptable in these set of circumstances, it's only really going to grow and grow, because what some people deem to be hateful, beyond the pale, offensive, is entirely subjective, and it will get to the point, if you let it run riot, that people who are, you know, broadly speaking, the mainstream will be gobbled up by it as well.
Tom, I think in this country we have laws to protect freedom of speech. What can be done to prevail upon the university authorities at places like Oxford to allow people to legally pursue their right to freedom of speech? Because this is flies in the face of everything this country is about. And why don't the authorities stamp down on these militant students who keep shutting people up?
Well, you make an interesting point, because universities are under obligations to uphold freedom of speech by law, as you say. The Education Act of 1986 in particular suggests that they lay out processes to uphold freedom of speech as much as is possible, and that has proved to be incredibly ineffective. I think that the problem is that at the same time universities are also under pressure from various other pieces of legislation to curtail speech in certain circumstances, so it's a bit of a mottled picture. In terms of what can be done about it, I think the argument that needs to be made is kind of a kind of cultural one on campus, because a lot of the censorship that we're talking about is not necessarily just the students' union or a university stamping down and saying we don't want these people here, it doesn't matter what students think. Often it is groups of students organising themselves to say we don't want this person to come. And so I think whilst, you know, we should look at how the law can be toughened up potentially, it's also a kind of heart and mind question. I think there's been a big problem in recent years about that argument not really being made enough.
Well, on that score, what kind of numbers are we talking about? Do you have any sense of how many no platformers managed to get Amber Rudd silenced or banned from speaking? It's a really interesting question, because I'm guessing, I'm of the belief that it's just a few people stirring things up, but I might be completely wrong.
So in this particular case, according to the statement put out by this particular society, they had a meeting of their committee. They decided that they no longer wanted to extend the invitation, even though it was about an hour before the event was supposed to go ahead, and it seemed to come off to some kind of a backlash. I mean, I think you're right in saying it is largely speaking small groups of students. Like, for instance, you know, students' unions tend to be very active in terms of shutting down speakers on campus, and those are often kind of elected on very thin mandates, and decisions are often taken by small groups of people, because I think most students don't really have much truck with it. It's just small groups of people who shout the loudest.
Can I just ask, because it sort of follows on from that, which is, could it be that a significant or a portion of students out there are finding themselves compelled to align their thoughts with these no platformers, because otherwise they may suffer some kind of consequence on campus, whether it be ostracised or criticised or bad-mouthed or such like? I hadn't contemplated that before, but presumably it's possible.
Oh, definitely. I think, you're basically in a situation in which these people, the no platformers, the censors, they feel that they've got the moral high ground.
And power,
they are empowered to shout people down, and they often collect in, students' unions and places like this where they can exact real power. And there is evidence to suggest that there's also a big problem with self-censorship amongst students as well. Policy Exchange did a report last year pointing out that pro-Brexit students, for instance, felt very uncomfortable voicing that opinion amongst their peers. So it's quite clear that chilling effect is setting in.
Here's Jenny for you.
Tom, I find all of this incredulous. It drives me up the wall. I thought that the idea of going to university was so that you could learn as much as possible from a variety of different people expressing different opinions, and that one of the biggest things you were going there to learn how to do was how to get information and create your own thoughts.
Oh, what a lovely old-fashioned view.
But I'm serious. I'm not working my fingers.
Showing your age, Jenny.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm going home. I'm tired. I drank tequila last night. I don't want this abuse.
She's got a point, though, hasn't she, Tom?
Oh, completely. I mean, universities are supposed to be spaces in which, if anything, free speech is, more in evidence, more infused in the culture of the place than anywhere else. If you don't have free speech in a university, you kind of don't have a university. And I think the other thing is, just on that point of, the thing about freedom of speech is that it actually empowers you to, as you were saying, kind of form your own arguments, but also to challenge things you dislike. And I think that's one of the things about no platforming someone like Amber Rudd or anyone, to be honest. The thing that's so striking about it is that it's utterly kind of pointless. It doesn't achieve anything. It doesn't challenge these people. It doesn't bring people to bear to their record. It just kind of pushes them slightly off campus. And I think that's one thing.
Such a good point. I hadn't actually, I know this was really dumb, but I hadn't even considered what do the no platformers gain. And that's really interesting because apart from feeling empowered, which brings us back to, the corridors of the student union and that sense that they are right and everybody else is wrong. But apart from that, you're right, Tom, they don't actually gain anything at all.
Well, but
even if these people are kind of really interested in, trying to change society, a lot of them like to think of themselves as radicals, as progressives. Really, the end point of what it is they're doing is just to close themselves off from the world. I mean, it has no impact on anything apart from their immediate surroundings and experience. So it seems, pretty low horizons in that.
I think, Tom, that there is evidence. If you look at Twitter and you read about these no platformers, that somewhere down the line our education system is letting kids down by not teaching them about intelligent debate. So if someone doesn't agree with...
Is it the teaching system or is it coming from other sources?
This is my theory, is somewhere down the line schools forgot to tell kids that it's okay not to agree with people and you don't have to start hating them just because they have different opinions. And that's what I think kids get to university, having not been taught about intelligent debate, and it goes downhill from there. That's my theory. Would you agree?
I think there's definitely an element of that, and there's certainly people have voiced concerns about a lot of this kind of intolerance setting in at a sort of younger age. But I think it's also just in our culture more broadly. The kind of basics of argument, the fact that you don't resort to ad hominem, when someone disagrees with you, the fact that if you're trying to, win an argument, it's a good idea to understand the other side. These are kind of basics which are, frequently forgotten in the kind of commentariat and on the Twitter.
Well, I was going to say that there were basics that were almost entirely absent from, if we wanted to pick a major political debate of our times, Brexit, wasn't it? Both sides both sides shouting at the other side and not even attempting to listen or understand the other side. Yeah, exactly. So I think, it's interesting. Kevin thought about schools, and I immediately thought about the sort of broader society. But there does seem to be that we are shunning the notion of engaging in debate and understanding the opposite side.
Intelligent debate seems to have died.
Where's it going to go to, Tom? How far? I mean, I've never lived through a period like this before, and I can't quite work out where this is going to take us. There's no platforming, this silencing of dissent.
It's really hard to tell. I mean, the optimist in me thinks that because things are getting so absurd, because we are talking about Amber Rudd, because we are talking about increasing numbers of feminists, people who you could feel that you can appeal to people and say this has gone too far.
Yes.
That it will just kind of force the conversation. It will make people that little bit more brave, and I think we're starting to see that a little bit. But as you say, for the moment, we are going to be, it feels like, stuck with this culture for some time yet.
You see, because another unintended consequence could be, for example, I get the call call one day. It's not like I'm going to be doing anything else with my time. Would you like to come up and speak to the Oxford Union? I say yes. Actually, why would I say yes? They ask me, I'll sit there, let me get back to you. And you think, nah, what's the point of saying yes? They're only going to blow me out at the last minute as they did with Amber. Rather, actually going to wait till she gets there before cancelling. No, I'll give it a miss. And then rather like self-censorship, voices of dissent or challenging voices don't get heard simply because they can't be bothered to go through the ritual of being no platformed at the last minute. So it's very, as we said right at the beginning, it's a very pernicious, nasty thing. And if I may again, Tom Slater from Spiked Online, he's written a think piece in The Spectator and he absolutely nails it. Well worth having a look. And thanks for giving up your time, Tom.